All right, so ready to dive deep into longevity.
Oh, absolutely. Always fascinated by this topic.
Today, we're going to be like uncovering those secrets to a longer, healthier life, right?
Yeah.
Sifting through a whole bunch of research, you know, expert opinions, all that good stuff.
Yeah, the goal is to really understand, like, not just how we age, but what we can actually do about it, you know?
I think that's what people really want to know. It's like, okay, we get it, diet and exercise, but give us the real insights, the stuff that like hasn't been said a million times.
Right, exactly. We're going deeper, beyond
Next
surface.
deeper. Like, did you know that inflammation might be like a key to this whole aging puzzle?
Oh, yeah. It's way more than just achy joints, right? We're talking like cellular level changes.
Yeah, impacting everything, organs, brains, the whole nine
The
yards.
whole 9 yards. Exactly. It's fascinating.
So ready to explore.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's take a trip to Japan, shall we?
Oh.
So researchers at Keio University, they were like, all right, let's study these longevity champions. Like these folks aged 85 to 110.
Wow, that's a good range there.
Right. They were looking for that like secret sauce. What makes these people tick?
Yeah, what sets them apart?
And you know what they found? These centenarians, they had like incredible low levels of inflammation.
That's really interesting.
It is. And it's not just a random observation either.
Right.
A study from Newcastle University, they found that mice with chronic inflammation, they aged way faster.
Even if it was like genetically engineered.
Even if it was genetically engineered. It's like inflammation just puts aging on fast forward.
So
And
regardless of your genes or environment, it seems.
Regardless.
That's kind of scary.
It is scary. So the question is, if inflammation is the accelerator, what's hitting the gas pedal?
Yeah, good question. It's got to be more than just the occasional bump or bruise, right?
Right. Right.
Well, a major culprit here, it's got to be our modern diet.
Well, diet always comes back to that.
It really does. And within that, there are some big offenders, I'd say, like processed snacks, ultra-processed foods, fruit juice, and alcohol. Those are the big ones.
Okay, those are the big four. Let's break it down, starting with the snacks. Full disclosure, I love a good bag of chips.
Yeah.
But what's the real deal here? Are we talking like more than just empty calories?
Oh, it's way more than just empty calories. The real problem is the ingredients. Those industrial oils, sneaky sugars, all that.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about those.
A lot of snacks, they're loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. We need some, but too much can trigger inflammation.
Oh, wow. So we're talking like serious inflammation, not just a little bloating after a salty snack.
Oh, yeah, this can contribute to, heart disease, stroke, even like mood disorders and cancer. We're talking serious stuff.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty hefty price to pay for a moment of crispy satisfaction.
It is.
So are all oils bad? Like, what should we be looking for?
Not all oils are created equal. Healthy fats like olive oil, flaxseed oil, those are a better bet. But the real sneaky one is the sugar. And I'm not just talking about regular sugar, it's the high fructose corn syrup. That's the real troublemaker.
High fructose corn syrup. Public enemy number one.
That's bad news.
What makes it so much worse than, like, regular sugar?
This stuff is sneaky. It binds with proteins in your body, forming these things called advanced glycation end products, AGs for short.
AGGs.
Yeah, and these AGs, they're like tiny wrecking balls damaging your DNA, triggering inflammation, and might even speed up cognitive decline.
It's not just empty calories. We're talking like accelerated aging at the cellular level.
You got it.
That is sobering.
It is.
It's like these snacks are designed to hook us, but they're actually like hijacking our health.
Right, and the food industry, they know what they're doing. They engineered these snacks to be hyper-palatable, addictive.
Playing our biology.
Yeah.
Making it that much harder to resist.
Exactly.
It's almost like we're up against a supervillain. Like the ultra-processed food industry. They've got their secret weapons.
Yeah.
And it's winning.
It's a tough battle.
But knowledge is power. That's why we're doing this.
Absolutely. Got to arm ourselves with information.
And speaking of ultra-processed foods,
Yeah.
those are even more concerning.
Oh,
right?
yeah. We're talking about like canned goods, cured meats, cheese, bread, anything with a long shelf life.
The stuff that lasts forever.
Forever, yeah. The problem is they're often packed with nitrites, which, you guessed it, trigger inflammation.
Okay, so we're talking about minimizing those trips down the center aisles of the grocery store.
Got it.
As much as possible, yes.
What about drinks? You mentioned fruit juice and alcohol. I'm curious about the juice thing because it just seems like it should be healthy.
I know, right? It's got that healthy halo, but it's basically concentrated sugar without the fiber you get from whole fruit. You'd have to eat like a dozen apples to get the same sugar as a glass of apple juice.
That puts it in perspective.
It really does. And what about alcohol? I thought moderate drinking was supposed to be good for you.
Sadly, the science is pretty clear on this one. Alcohol weakens your immune system, and that opens the door to inflammation in your gut and liver.
And that's regardless of how much you drink.
Regardless.
Okay, so we've tackled diet. Now, what about stress? I know it impacts my mood and energy levels,
Yeah.
but how does it actually, connect to aging?
Stress is huge. A 2017 study actually found a strong link between chronic stress and a whole bunch of diseases. Heart disease, diabetes, even Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
And when we talk about stress, it's not just those external pressures like work deadlines or family drama.
Right.
It's also about that internal stress we put on ourselves. Expectations, anxieties, all that stuff that keeps us in fight or flight mode.
It's like that constant internal chatter.
Exactly. So it's not just about avoiding those external stressors. It's about managing that internal dialogue, too.
Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
You're right. It's not easy. Sometimes the best thing you can do is change your environment.
Yeah.
Like, distance yourself from people or situations that trigger that stress response. But I know that's not always feasible.
Right. You can't exactly avoid your family.
Exactly.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies when it comes to stress.
That's true.
Those negative thoughts can be relentless.
It can. So if you can't physically remove yourself, sometimes the best you can do is just mentally close your ears, protect yourself.
Like build up that resilience.
Exactly. Build that resilience. And it goes both ways, We can't always control the stress that comes our way, but we can be mindful of how we might be stressing others out.
That's a good point. We often think of stress as this individual burden, but it can be contagious.
It really can.
And it's not just nagging or deadlines we're talking about.
Yeah.
It could be something like anger. That's a huge stressor.
Big time. And anger, it particularly affects the liver, potentially leading to inflammation and more serious conditions down the line.
So managing stress, it's not just about feeling better in the moment, it's about protecting ourselves long term.
Exactly. It's an investment in your future health.
All right, so we've covered the food we eat and the stress we manage, right? But what about something we do every single day? Something that can either recharge us or leave us totally drained.
You're talking about sleep.
Sleep, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about feeling groggy or having those dark circles, right?
Yeah. Sleep, or I guess lack of sleep, has a huge impact on aging and inflammation.
I gotta admit, I'm kind of night owl. I often find myself burning the midnight oil thinking, oh, I'll just catch up later. But are you saying that even the occasional late night can, do some real damage?
Well, a 2013 study found that both chronic sleep deprivation and those occasional all-nighters, they actually trigger an inflammatory response, like your body's on high alert.
So even one night of bad sleep can mess with my system. Wow, I didn't realize it was that immediate.
It's not just about how you feel the next day. Even one night of missed sleep can actually impact your body's inflammation levels,
Okay, so sleep is, crucial. Got it.
Yeah.
Does that mean I should be aiming for, 10 hours a night?
Not necessarily. More isn't always better. There's kind of a sweet spot when it comes to sleep.
Okay.
And for most people, it's around 7 to 8 hours.
7 to 8.
Yeah. This actually came up in a really fascinating large-scale study from Western University in Canada. They looked at the impact of sleep on brain function across a huge range of ages, from 18 to 100 years old.
Yeah, 18 to 100, that's pretty comprehensive.
It is, yeah. And the results were surprisingly consistent. 7 to 8 hours of sleep was optimal for brain function regardless of age.
So we got our target, 7 to 8 hours. But what happens if we, consistently fall outside that window? Is the damage permanent?
Well, here's the good news. They found that the effects of sleep deprivation on brain function, they're actually reversible, but only up to a point.
So, if I pull an all-nighter cramming for a test, I can undo some of the damage with a good night's sleep.
Exactly. One night of good sleep can make a huge difference. They even found that, your attractiveness on a date can be boosted by a good night's sleep.
Okay, now that's a study I can get behind.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be scheduling in some pre-date naps.
There you go.
But, joking aside, what happens if I consistently skimp on sleep? Night after night, year after year?
Well, that's when things get a bit more serious. The study found that chronic sleep deprivation, consistently sleeping only 4 hours a night, could lead to irreversible brain damage within 10 years.
Okay, that's a scary thought.
It is, and it really challenges that I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
It also kind of debunks that myth that, success is solely based on effort. Genetics play a role too. Some people are naturally wired to be short sleepers, but if you don't have a family history of that and you're constantly struggling to get a full night's sleep, talk to your doctor.
Right. There might be something else going on.
Exactly. There might be an underlying health issue.
So if we do have to burn the midnight oil, are there any strategies to mitigate the damage? What about napping? Is that legit?
Napping can be a good tool if you do it strategically. For a quick refresh, keep it under 30 minutes. If you're really trying to catch up, you can go up to 90 minutes. But try not to make it a habit.
Right. Consistency is key. What about as we get older? Don't our sleep needs change?
That's actually another myth. The optimal 7 to 8 hours holds true across all age groups. In fact, if older adults are consistently sleeping less than that, it might be a sign of aging itself.
So it's like the less we sleep, the faster we age. And the more we age, the harder it is to get enough sleep.
Exactly. And it all ties back to cognitive decline. Sufficient sleep is protective against dementia. So if you're struggling with insomnia, don't just brush it off as part of aging. Talk to your doctor. There are strategies, even medications, that can help you prioritize sleep. And don't underestimate the power of exercise.
Exercise can help with sleep.
Oh, absolutely. Regular physical activity can definitely improve sleep quality.
Okay, good to know. This has been really eye-opening. I think we've all been guilty of sacrificing sleep at some point, but it's clear that it has a much bigger impact on our health and longevity than we realize.
I agree.
So we've covered diet, stress, and sleep. Any other secret weapons in this battle against aging?
Aging is inevitable, but we're not powerless. We've already covered the big ones. Minimize processed snacks, ultra-processed foods, fruit juice, alcohol. Manage that stress. Prioritize those 78 hours of sleep. And remember, you don't have to be perfect.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly. If you can't completely eliminate certain foods, that's okay. Just focus on the areas where you can make a difference.
So it's about balance, finding what works for you,
Yeah.
making sustainable changes.
Yes, exactly. And don't forget about the foods that can actually combat inflammation and promote youthfulness. We talked about healthy fats like olive oil, but let's not underestimate the power of fiber.
Fiber. Okay, I know it's good for digestion, but how does that connect to anti-aging?
Fiber is amazing. It keeps things moving. It promotes a healthy gut microbiome, which is super important for overall health. And some studies even suggest it might have anti-cancer properties.
Okay, I'm sold on fiber. What are some good sources?
Oh, there's so many. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Think like celery, okra, broccoli, spinach, carrots, avocados, guavas, blueberries, kiwis, apples, oranges, mushrooms, seaweed.
Wow, there's a lot of options there. Are there any foods that specifically target inflammation, like directly?
Absolutely. Cherries, strawberries, tomatoes, nuts and seeds are great. Oily fish like salmon, sardines, tuna are also fantastic sources of omega-3 fatty acids, which have powerful anti-inflammatory properties.
This is great info. It's really empowering to know that we can actually fight back against inflammation and aging through the foods we eat. It's like building our own anti-aging arsenal.
I like that. We've been focusing on human aging, but there's so much we can learn from the animal kingdom. Remember when we talked about elephants and their resistance to cancer?
Of course, yeah. It's amazing how these creatures have evolved these incredible defense mechanisms.
Well, it turns out elephant genes also suppress aging. They don't experience the same gradual decline that we do.
So what's their secret? What can we learn from these gentle giants?
Well, from an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. Wild animals need to stay strong and agile to survive predators, right? They can't afford to slow down as they get older. Their survival depends on it.
That's incredible. Imagine if we could tap into those elephant genes, apply that knowledge to human longevity research.
Right. That's a promising avenue for research. And then there's the more futuristic approach, like Elon Musk is investing heavily in merging humans with machines to achieve immortality.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. We're getting a little sci-fi there.
We are.
But, let's be real. There are some foods that are just hard to avoid, even if we know they're not optimal. What do we do about those situations? Do we have to be, constantly vigilant? Or is there room for a little, indulgence?
Like I said before, it's all about balance. If you really enjoy a certain food that might not be the healthiest, you don't have to completely eliminate it. Just be mindful of portion sizes and make sure you're balancing it out with other healthy choices.
So if I have a sweet tooth and can't imagine giving up dessert entirely,
Yeah,
I can still maintain a healthy lifestyle overall.
absolutely. Maybe you cut back on sugary drinks and processed snacks during the week so you can enjoy that piece of cake on the weekend without the guilt.
It's about making conscious choices.
Exactly. Conscious choices, not restrictions.
What about exercise? We haven't talked about that too much, but I know it's important. Does it play a role in all this?
Oh, absolutely. Exercise is one of the most powerful tools we have to combat aging. Reduces inflammation, improves cardiovascular health, strengthens muscles and bones, even boosts brain function. Aim for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week.
So like a brisk walk, some gardening, dancing.
Exactly.
Uh,
Anything that gets you moving.
Okay, so if I incorporate those tips, smart food choices, stress management, prioritizing sleep, regular exercise, I'm setting myself up for a longer, healthier life. I like the sound of that.
It sounds like a good plan.
This has been such an informative deep dive. Anything else you want to add before we wrap things up?
Just remember that aging is a complex process, and we still have a lot to learn. But by focusing on the things we can control, like our diet, stress levels, sleep habits, and exercise routine, we can definitely influence how we age. It's not about stopping the clock. It's about making the most of the time we have.
Love that. It's about quality of life, not just quantity.
Exactly.
It's been amazing having you on the show. Thanks for sharing your insights with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for another deep dive into the fascinating world of knowledge. We'll catch you next time for another exploration. Until then, stay curious and keep those minds engaged. It's like amazing, right? How everything's so interconnected. Like, who knew that just getting enough sleep could have such a big impact?
Right. And that's what I find so empowering about all of this. It's not some magic pill. It's about those like everyday choices we make, the small things that actually make a big difference over time.
It's about taking control,
Mm-hmm.
Like, we actually have more power than we think.
Mm.
So for our listeners out there, like, what are the key takeaways, the big things to remember from this deep dive?
Well, first off, like inflammation is a major player in aging, but we can do something about it. And diet is a huge part of that. Processed snacks, all those ultra-processed foods, sugary drinks, alcohol, those are like fueling the fire.
Yeah, it's like pouring gasoline on the flames.
Exactly. And don't forget about managing stress, both external and internal. And those 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that's crucial.
It all comes back to those like basic lifestyle factors,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
it does. It's the things we do every single day that really add up.
It's about consistency.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about being perfect. Start small, make gradual changes, find what works for you, and celebrate those wins along the way.
I love that. Celebrate those wins. This has been an incredible journey, and I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been great.
I'm definitely like more motivated to make some positive changes in my own life.
That's what it's all about. Knowledge is power, but only if you use it, right?
Exactly. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you with a thought. If you could add an extra, like, decade of healthy, vibrant life to your journey, what would you do with it? What dreams would you pursue? What adventures would you have? Let that question simmer as you go about your day. And remember, this whole quest for longevity, it's a journey, not a destination. Thanks for joining us.